And
Notre Dame fans, welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Vince, you didn't get my text. My
name
just
showed up right when you started talking.
I'm the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, joined today by our football analyst, Vince Dario. And we are here for our Upon Further Review podcast. Vince and I had a chance to dive into the film and look at more. And so we're going to try to offer you some different takes to what we saw, what we talked about last night, and just things that we saw as we broke down the film. But Vince, I have to say, man, I am really excited that you were here tonight, because the original plan is you were not going to be here tonight, and it was just going to be me, and I like it way better when it's the two of us. So I got to ask, first of all, big picture, Vince, when you broke down the film, were you as pleased as you were last night after watching the game live? Were you less pleased, maybe more concerned, or were you even more pleased with what you saw from the game?
Yeah, so offensively, there's part of me that was more pleased, and then there was part of me that was like, wow, how does this keep happening? That I kept asking myself, right? So that was part of it for offense for me. And then defensively, it was actually, I got a little bit more, I was a little happier than I was yesterday. And for the simple fact that, look, there were still mistakes that were made, obviously, but I think some of it was scheme related. And so I can't really take it out on the players per se. But again, there's the way the game flowed defensively. I didn't like kind of the way things kind of went, but at the same time, I don't necessarily blame the players. So it's interesting, and we'll get into it more specifically, but I was a little bit happier from a player standpoint, because that's what I do when I watch the film, and I know you're probably the same way. I'm looking at players. I'm not necessarily looking at scheme a whole lot.
I tend to look more at I tend to look first at the scheme and what they did.
Sure.
I look for execution.
And that's the big one for me.
And then the second part is, okay, did individual players play better or worse, or about the same from what I saw?
And that's where it is for me as well. And the scheme defensively, I got a little bit better idea of what they were trying to do in the second half, which is when they really gave up all those rushing yards. And it made more sense to me as to why they gave up those rushing yards. So obviously we'll get into some specifics, but it made me feel a little bit better about the grand scheme of defense. So it was not a bad rewatch for me, to be honest with you.
Vince, I want to start with the defense tonight, because we started with the offense last night on our post-game show. I want to start with the defense because
sounds good.
I have come to two very strong conclusions about the game plan last night. Number one is I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It's just something that I wouldn't have done. It's not the game plan I would have gone with. I would have liked to see a more aggressive attacking defense. I would have liked to see them turn the defensive line loose. At the same time, I came away with the conclusion of, I get what they were trying to do, and it worked.
It did.
At the end of the day, Vince, they held USC to their lowest point total since September of 2019.
Right.
Second lowest yards total, I believe, of the season, I believe. And it was one of those things where I just felt like it wasn't what I personally would have done, but I really can't criticize it too much, because
it wasn't pretty.
You lost Kyle Hamilton.
Right.
Early.
That's huge, and people need to remember that.
Right. And number two, I get it, because you have to look at schemes. You have to look at opponent specific. And the reality is I wrote about this, and real quick, we have a couple super chats that we will get to. I promise.
Yes, I'm sitting on the first one, so I don't lose it,
because it's about recruiting, and we'll get to that. But for me, Vince, it's what I come down to is this: what is the end game? What's the objective? Is the objective to be sexy, as you mentioned? Is the objective to hold them to 250 yards and have 12 tackles for loss and 5 sacks? Or is the objective to keep their points down? And as I wrote in my key takeaways after the game, Vince, I came to two realizations that I believe Marcus Freeman came to and his staff came to watching USC. One, USC's dangerous in certain areas to rip off big plays.
Sure.
Number two, they're an incredibly undisciplined football team that will shoot themselves in the foot if you give them enough opportunities. The one thing you can't do to a team like that is let them rip off big plays and cheap points. And that's something you and I talked about leading up to the game.
Right.
And I feel like they went with the thought of, yeah, this isn't really what I like, but we have to avoid giving up the big play.
Right.
And there was the 20-20 game plan, and then there was the red zone game plan.
Right.
The red zone game plan is exactly what I wanted to see all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But why did they do that? Because it was okay, they can't rip off a big play at the 18.
Exactly. Right. Yards. Everything's more condensed. There is no big play.
How did you see all that, Vince? Did you?
As far as like, I agree with you.
Did you see it that way? I mean, what did you think of the overall game plan and why? And do you think it was right and all that kind of stuff?
I understand why they did it. I mean, look, I said that I thought that that's maybe the way that they're going to go about things on Thursday, and not necessarily that I agreed with it, but it was a plan in my head that made sense from it will get them out of this game alive and with a win. Right? Like that was my thought process on the defensive strategy. I didn't necessarily have an issue with it. My issue more, I guess, was a little bit of lack of execution on a couple of plays. Mm-hmm. And I probably would have switched some things up when they started running the ball with such efficiency. But again, the plan that they had in place allowed them to run the football. Like that unfortunately, in football, you can't necessarily stop everything, especially against a team like USC. And so you kind of pick your poison. And what they did is they kind of allowed – now, granted, again, there were some execution and some missed tackles.
Yeah.
But they were basically telling USC, go ahead and run the ball and run the clock. That's not going to hurt us.
Because you know what happens every time they hand off to Keontae Ingram? They're not throwing it to Drake London.
Yeah, there was a point in the game where I think they had one first down by somebody that wasn't Drake London, and it was deep into the first half.
Right.
And he got his, and we told everybody he's going to get. Now, I would not have predicted what he did. From a stat, I would not have predicted as many yards and catches as he had.
But see, this is the thing we talked about before the show, Vince, is I don't care about his stats.
Exactly.
I said you can't let him take the game over, and he really didn't.
He didn't.
And part of it to me was the game plan is, look, he wants to catch and have a bunch of 6, 7, 8 yard gains, go for it. I thought the two big plays he had a 29-yard gain in the first half. That was a mistake from Clarence Lewis. And he had a 44-yard gain in the second half. That was a mistake from Clarence Lewis that I think is one of the plays we absolutely would not have seen happen had Kyle Hamilton been in the game. That 44-yard post route, which they hit, does not happen if Kyle Hamilton's in the game.
Right.
In my opinion.
Agreed.
So to me, it was one of those things where they were willing to give up certain things. Something like, man, he's just catching hitches and under routes, and I think it was just one thing. Fine, catches. You want to catch a 6-yard gain?
It was that under stuff.
That's cool.
It was the under stuff,
right.
And that's why we said it was so important to tackle in space with him. And they didn't always do, and that was a fantastic job of that. I mean, he was more elusive than I thought he would be as far as breaking some tackles and things.
Well, there's also some really, for being honest, some piss poor technique.
I agree. But the key for me, if everybody's wants to bang Marcus Freeman and all that, there were guys there to make plays. So the scheme was sound, in my opinion. Yeah. It's just they have to execute it. You've got to finish, right? So that's more my issue. There was guys there to finish, they just didn't do it.
You know what's funny? It's one of the things that we often complain about with the offense at Notre Dame under Brian Kelly has been his stubbornness. That I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do what we're going to do no matter what the opponent, no matter what my personnel is.
Yes,
and now we're criticizing Marcus Freeman for going away from what he believes in because he felt that gave them the best chance to keep the points down against USC, which is the ultimate goal of a defense.
Yes.
I just find that to be kind of funny. And I was thinking about that because I was getting really frustrated about the defensive game plan. And when I'm talking about criticizing people for having that view, I'm not talking about our fans. I'm talking about me.
Yeah, right.
I'm talking about, my thoughts on it because I'm like,
right.
Okay, I can't be a hypocrite here. I can't sit there and be like, I'm getting sick of, the offense. Just we're going to do what we do no matter what. And I'm like, well, that's exactly the opposite of what Marcus Freeman did.
Yeah,
He
that's
said,
true.
yes, this is what I like. I want to be an aggressive, attacking, this kind of guy. But that puts us at risk against this team like it did against Cincinnati, like it did against Florida State, because they have enough athletes to say, hey, let's go make this play. Let's go take this shot.
Because they were a nickel and dime a ton in the second half, a ton, which took linebackers off the field. And it was whether it's a 3-front or a 4-front, when you take linebackers off the field, it's not overly difficult to get run lanes established because you have no second level. And a lot of times, if there was a 3-front and there was one linebacker, they were bringing the linebacker, and so it was really taking away a second level. And so that was frustrating as well. But again, like you said, their whole goal was to not let USC get in the end zone on a consistent basis and from big plays. And they did that. I mean, both of their touchdowns. If I would have told you, hey, USC is going to score 2 touchdowns on the ground in this game, you'd have been like, great, no problem, and those will be their only 2 touchdowns. Great, sounds good. Right. You know what I mean? And that's what they ended up doing, and it worked out for them. So I think all in all, Marcus Freeman went to bed pretty happy. Now, he's always going to be a perfectionist.
I'll bet you he wasn't super happy.
Well, but you know what I mean.
Here's why I say that. He's going to be pleased with the result.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I kind of feel like if I'm Marcus Freeman, and I've been in this situation before, where you have success, but you almost feel kind of dirty because you didn't do it the way you wanted to do it. You're like, like it's kind of one of those things.
Want to go home and take a shower,
honestly. And I don't mean this to be disrespect to the current roster, because I think the kids on the team now are pretty good players. But it's one of those things where I cannot wait to get my recruits in here, so I can do this a different way. And honestly, I think that's again, when I think about that, and I thought about that when I was breaking down the film, I actually have to give Marcus Freeman props. I mean, this is where I had the biggest change in thought from last night to now. That's hard to go away from everything that's got you to Notre Dame.
Right.
You have to go away from, because honestly, that's just not what's best for us tonight with the players we have. And once Kyle Hamilton went out, I think he would have been foolish not to do that. I mean, and I hate saying that because I don't like that kind of defense. But honestly, this is no different than what Clark Lee did 2 years ago. I went back and watched some of the 2019 game today, Vince, just to kind of refresh my memory. And go watch that game. Look what he does with Julian Okwara the first 2 plays of that game. Lines him up on the edge and then drops him into coverage. And it was the whole thing. It was bend but don't break. It was keep everything in front of you. And the difference is that when that defense allowed USC to get into the red zone in the second half, Notre Dame couldn't stop them in the second half. This team, for the most part, was able to come up with some stops until the very, very end. But this is what we saw before. Look, the air raid. You're gonna get your yards. They're gonna 100%. Get their yards.
We told people that.
It's keep the points down, and that's exactly what they did. Again, I didn't love it. It's not sexy. It kind of makes me feel like, but it got 16 points, lowest point total since September of 2019.
And I wonder if we would have seen a little bit more aggression if Kyle Hamilton was still in the game.
A little bit, I think.
What
we would have seen is more targeted attacks.
Yeah.
I think because they were mixing it up pretty good the first 2 series.
Right.
They were dropping 3, dropping 8, but they were mixing it up. They were bringing more really early. They were bringing more stunts out of the 3-man fronts. They were bringing the linebackers on more crashes. So there were some times even out of the 3-man fronts where they were bringing 5 guys.
Right.
We didn't see a lot of that after Hamilton went down.
Because people have to understand that Kyle Hamilton can cover more ground than anybody on this team, more ground than anybody in the country. And so he can make up area that you vacate by bringing linebackers, right? So I want to make sure everybody understands that. So when he's not there anymore, and this is no disrespect to DJ Brown, because I thought he played about as well as he can play in relief of Kyle Hamilton, okay? But it would be foolish for Marcus Freeman to have the exact same game plan with DJ Brown in the game as you did with Kyle Hamilton. That's not smart. Okay.
Right.
And he adjusted. He adjusted and said, look, we need to be a little bit more conservative. We need to keep everything in front of us, and we'll take what they give us. And that's kind of what they did. Again, some execution issues that they need to get cleaned up, and we've seen a little bit of it 2 weeks in a row. But again, 16 points. I mean, and I realize he yanked an extra point. So 17, but either way, we're still having the same conversation.
One group I want to talk about, Vince, I want to talk about the linebackers.
Yes.
That was a group that I wanted to get a chance to really dive more into after watching the game. Because during the game, I kind of focused on the secondary and the front a lot, not the linebackers.
Sure.
That was one of the areas I know you keyed in on when you broke the game down.
It did.
Overall, what did you think of the play of the linebackers? Because we didn't talk about them a whole lot last night. What did you think of the play of the linebackers from last night?
So first half, I thought they played pretty darn well, to be honest with you. I was very impressed. I thought as a group, I thought the linebackers dropped into coverage with a purpose more this week than they have in the past. And that's huge because we were banging on those guys for at times not dropping with a purpose. And what I mean by that is when you're dropping into zone, don't just go to an area. Right. You have to go, but you have to have your head on a swivel. When a guy comes into your zone, you've got to take a man-to-man until he leaves your zone. And then you got to communicate with the guy next to you, et cetera. And they weren't really doing that. And that was a problem for me. They would just kind of be there. Now, there were a couple of times where a guy got loose, and was able to find. But guess what? Drake London's a really good player, and he was able to find some holes in the zone. And there's always going to be holes in the zone. You just don't want it to be consistently.
Right.
So I was actually impressed with a lot of their drops. I was impressed with Isaiah Foskey and his drops. He had his head on a swivel a lot.
By far his best coverage game. And that's why I said last night, this is why this would be the first film I'm sending to every NFL team.
Yeah.
Whenever he decides to leave, unless he has like a 5-sack game or something like that. This is the
absolutely.
Because again, he had two sacks.
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
But he dropped with a purpose.
Yeah.
And he was getting under routes.
That was the thing, Vince. I noticed he was actually finding receivers. He's never done that before. And still not great at it. I mean, there was one play where they ran a seam route and he ran with the guy and they kind of settled in. He's gonna have to get better, but he's still got way more depth to where I don't think the quarterback was comfortable trying to fit that ball over top of him and in front of the safety.
And I'll say the same for Bo Bauer. I thought he actually dropped with a pretty good purpose tonight.
By far his best coverage game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was actually impressed with Bo. There was a couple of times where Drew Brees was talking about, he had a play from behind the quarterback, and he was talking about how Slovis was going to his third option. He was, here's option 1, here's option 2, here's option 3. Option 2 almost every time was Bo Bauer being underneath the receiver, and he was covered. And so he had to go to option 3, right? I was actually pretty impressed with Bo Bauer in this game. From a run game standpoint, the first half, I thought they were really good. They didn't have a lot of opportunities, but they were flying to the football. They were getting into gaps and causing USC to not be able to run the ball. I thought in the second half, two things. Number one, I felt like they were in dime a little bit more often than they were in the first half, and that prevented the linebackers from making plays because they weren't on the field for the most part. And number two, the defensive line was somewhat allowing USC to get to the second level with their offensive linemen. And I'm not necessarily blaming the defensive line. I think I'm actually going to give props to the USC offensive line for doing a better job of getting to the second level. But I thought that the linebackers were having to fight off more blocks in the second half.
I think part of it was the USC line. I think the Notre Dame defensive line also didn't play well. They were hitting and stopping a lot more in the second half.
Right.
I thought.
So there you go. So you saw what I saw then.
Mm-hmm. There was also some missed tackle opportunities. I mean, there was a play where Keontae Ingram rushed for like 6 yards, and Jason Adamiola had a chance to hit him in the backfield. And a couple times they –
Yeah. Yep.
No,
there was one – I was going to say there was one time where both linebackers went to the right, and they kind of followed each other. And I don't know if they were going to the same gap or if they were going to like C and D, but they both went to the right, and the run came to the left. From the defensive standpoint. And so I don't know if that was a miscommunication or
We've
they were
seen
both
that a few times this year. I got to think that's a miscommunication because we don't
that's
see it
what I
enough
thought
for
too.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, because they vacated the entire left-hand side.
We don't see enough of that for me to think that's a play call.
So,
and normally what you would see is you'd see a safety rolling right down where they left.
Right, and there wasn't. It was
that.
completely vacated. And now Houston Griffith ended up coming up and making that play, but he came from a safety depth, right? So he wasn't replacing.
There you go.
Yeah, he wasn't replacing. He was just making a play because there was nobody to make it.
Something also I think that gave Notre Dame problems in the second half, and it started a little bit in the second quarter, is I thought USC did a good job of saying, hey, they're whooping us up front. We got to go. We got to go fast. They did exactly what we've been talking about the Notre Dame offense doing, and it forced Notre Dame to be more line up and play. Because there were several times, I think, especially in the third quarter, where they were snapping the ball and Notre Dame was barely lining up.
I agree.
And that was a really good halftime adjustment by USC, in my opinion. Now, Notre Dame buckled down and got into the red zone, and really the red zone defense was the biggest part of this game. And that's where you saw Marcus Freeman turn the heat up. You know, they got into the red zone.
Too. He was bringing 6 at times. I mean, that was great.
Because you're not worried about anybody throwing the ball over your head at that point in time.
Exactly.
And so I thought the red zone game plan was really effective. But I thought overall the second half from both the offense and defense was a little bit disappointing. And to me, that was my big takeaway from last night is we just didn't see this team have that killer instinct. And I know some people hate that phrase, and I don't love it, but I don't really know how else to call it. That just, hey, we got them on the ropes, let's bury them. And honestly, that starts at the top because Brian Kelly doesn't have that mentality.
No, he takes
you listen to the second half speech, and it was like, it's like that was kind of gross. Like it was kind of like, don't screw this up, kind of thing.
Right. It really kind of was,
And they played like that. And you could tell they went away from what worked in the first half on both sides of the ball to a degree. They were just way better than USC in the second half as far as talent-wise. But I think, too, is I think overall, if you really break down the numbers, outside of those 2 mistakes by Clarence Lewis that gave up combined 73 yards by Drake London on 2 catches, if you really look at it, his other 13 catches went for 98 yards.
Yeah.
He had a catch he had a double move where he beat Clarence for 44 yards, and he had that. So we broke the cover 2 mistake down last night, right? We explained that, so we don't need to do that again.
So that's 7 yards a catch,
right? I
mean, 7.5 yards.
13 catches for 98 yards. Like that's a good running game. That's not a good receiving game.
That's right.
So outside of those 2 big plays, Drake. This was my point last night. You can't let him wreck a game because that 44-yard gain set up a score, right? And that was the thing I thought they did a really good job of last night. Is they didn't like bracket him a ton. They kind of did some things where they would just kind of play Clarence Lewis inside of him. They tried to do it from a more normal alignment in the first half, and a couple times Clarence did a really nice job of like there was a third down where he just beat Drake to the slant spot.
Right,
it's a good play.
Sure.
But overall, I thought that they were just, hey, we're just going to take that away in the second half. And I thought that was a good game plan by them. But they were just kind of like, look, what we're going to have to not let him do is beat us deep. And that was really what it came down to. And then the only other time that they beat him deep was a play where J.D. Bertrand got beat up the seam by a tight end. And we talked about this last night. It was good coverage. It's just a great ball and a great catch.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones where it's kind of like, you say to the other sideline, well done. Good execution.
You got us.
Right.
He was there. There's no 2 ways about it. He was there. So, and that just goes, further to our point about the linebackers being pretty good in coverage.
Right. They had a solid night. But I think the tempo was an issue for Notre Dame, and I think the tackling were the 2 biggest issues. Beyond that, Vince, my final piece is that they're going to have to get better at the other cornerback spot. And I mean, it's week after week after week after week. And hey, it's not getting any easier. It's not going to be easier next week when you play North Carolina.
No,
North Carolina doesn't have a 1 as good as Drake London.
But they're more balanced.
They got a 2, a 3, and a 4 that are better than the 2, 3, and a 4 at USC.
Right.
Brendan Armstrong of Virginia's on pace for like 5,300 yards this year. It's insane. It doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
And so he's going to have to play better, or they're going to have to figure something out on how to protect him. I don't know if they don't want to go to a freshman. They don't think those guys can play. I don't know, but you can't just – and it's not fair to Clarence because Clarence isn't a man cover guy. That's just not who he is. So either A, you got to adjust your defense and just be more of a zone team, and you put Clarence in position to do more what he does well, or B, you're going to have to put somebody in there that fits what you want to do, because they can't keep – and I don't blame Clarence. You're asking him to play a certain style that he's just not – he was recruited to play Clark Lee's sort of off-man, Julian Love type of coverage.
Which is why he will make a good safety if they move him there.
He was a pretty good player last year. I mean, he was better in coverage last year than he is this year, because it was a scheme that fit his skill set. And that's just something they're going to have to figure out. Like, you're going to have to consider giving Ryan Barnes or Phillip or somebody a shot, or you're going to have to change what you're doing. You can't keep putting him in that position. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Any other thoughts from the defense, Vince?
Well, you pretty much said what I wanted to say about Clarence Lewis. I want you to address specifically, saw a lot of comments about why didn't Cam Hart just shadow Drake London? What's the thought process behind that from a defensive coordinator spot?
Well, there wouldn't have been anything necessarily wrong with that. It's just a couple things about that. Number one, it's really hard to shadow a guy with one player, because wherever you line up Cam Hart's going to alter what you call. And I think number one. Number two, you're going to ask Cam Hart to do things against Drake London in spots where Drake plays in the slot a lot, for example, whereas Cam doesn't play in the slot. There are technique differences between playing in the boundary and playing to the field. And so you have a cornerback that now in Notre Dame's defense, not in every defense, in Notre Dame's defense.
Right.
So then on one play, okay, gee, I'm to the field now. I have this call. And my fear is since it's not something you normally do, you run the risk of Cam he just has to get one call wrong or one technique thing wrong, and it's a 60-yard touchdown.
Right, because you're essentially asking him to play 3 different positions if you're going to have him shadow.
Right, and the boundary corner's responsibilities are different from the field corner and the slot and all those different type of things.
Right.
And to me, you're also talking about a kid who made his 7th career start last night.
Correct.
Now, in a year or two, maybe I would think about having Cam do that. I'm not having Cam do that in Game 7. I think the other part too is the fact that they had Cam basically shut down the other side of the field, which is exactly what happened. He gave up one off coverage pass on a bootleg early in the game. And
it was like first quarter.
Yeah. And then they tried to throw at him. It was like on a scramble, and the guy came, just wasn't even really him getting beat.
Yeah.
And then they tried to go at him later in the game, and they couldn't do anything about it. He basically took away half the field, which allowed them to kind of play over the top of Drake and take the deep ball away all game, with the one late exception. So I think it was, we're going to let Cam shut down whoever he's playing, and then we're just going to kind of high-low Drake all night to make sure he doesn't hit the deep ball. I think it's a sound plan. I think there's a lot of reasons why this is not the year you want to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of that anyway, to be honest with you, because to me, as an offensive coach, if you're going to have a cornerback shadowing my best player, and I'll tell you, I've used this example before. When I was at Duquesne, we were playing a team. I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Jay Bateman's team. I'm trying to remember who it was. But we were playing a team, I think it might have been St. Peter's, where basically our speed guy, Yarden Brantley, wherever we figured this out after a series, wherever he would line up, they would put a corner and a safety. So he actually had a safety mirroring him. And so they either have the nickel or they didn't have the corners, but the safety would mirror him. So wherever we lined up Yarden, they were going to put 2 guys over top of him. Well, we kind of figured out, okay, pretty quickly. I was like, hey, coach, this is what they're doing. And so what we did was we manipulated them the rest of the game. We ended up having like 600 yards of offense. Or one of our receivers had like 10 catches for 120 yards. Another one had Michael Warford had like 6 catches for 150 yards. I mean, so if we wanted to hit a double combination to the field, we just put Yarden backside, and we knew they were going to have basically 3 guys backside. If we wanted to hit an outside shot and we wanted to occupy that safety and bang a post over top of it, we put Yarden right in the slot, put Michael outside. That safety would be just eyeing Michael or eyeing Yarden, and Michael would beat him over top for a touchdown. And we just could toy with them the whole game.
Right. Now,
that was a bad team, right? And Notre Dame's not a bad team. But having said that, the point still stands in that if I know you're going to take Cam Hart wherever he's going to go, then I'm going to manipulate that to get some other opportunities.
Sure,
Number
sure.
one. Number two, they motioned with Michael Warfield so much, it would have been almost impossible to have Cam always in position to be over top of him. Some of the catches he made last night, they put him in like a wing position behind the line and had him release. I'd rather just let him catch a 4-yard route and tackle him.
Yeah,
you don't need to have
exactly.
Cam Hart doing that. And what they would have done is they would have done things with Drake London where they would have used him as a decoy more to then open up some other big play opportunities again by the other players. That's the way I look at it. So I wouldn't have blamed them for putting Cam on Drake London, but it's not what I would have done, to be honest with you. In that regards, I had no problem with them not making that decision.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out there because we had a lot of people talking about it.
Do you agree? Disagree with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Completely agree. I don't think Cam, as good as Cam is doing, and as much faith as I have in Cam, I do not want to put him in a position to have to know and understand 3 different positions in one game.
Yeah,
it's one thing to move him to the field for the entire game, so he's just worried about that one position. Then maybe the next game you move him over to the boundary. Okay, he only has to focus on one thing though. You know what I mean? Not 3 different positions all in one game. That's too much right now for him. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And then again, it does not take a rocket scientist offensive coordinator to work against that kind of a strategy, as you had mentioned. So I agree with that completely. My final thoughts on the defense were I appreciated the fact that Marcus Freeman was willing to kind of go outside his comfort zone to win the game. And because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Again, there were execution issues that need to still be cleaned up, but being able to overcome the loss of your best player as well, I think is big. And so I'm not as upset with the defense as maybe I was last night after watching it back, but they still need to get better, and they still need to clean up some of that stuff for sure.
Which I think says a lot about how good they were last night. And again, part of that was USC made mistakes. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. If you give USC enough opportunity, you give them enough rope, they're going to hang themselves. Right?
Yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
that the old expression?
Yeah,
and that's exactly what they did. And then the other thing too is we have a red zone plan. That's what we looking at from a coach. We have a red zone plan,
right?
That we know you can't stop, because then it becomes about our line versus your line.
Correct.
And USC did a nice job in that the touchdown drive they had late is they didn't give Notre Dame an opportunity to get into that red zone because of the tempo. They just went.
Right.
And it was harder for Notre Dame to get into that. And that's
where tempo can help you.
That was the biggest takeaway for me was they didn't adjust quick enough to the tempo, especially in the red zone. And that allowed USC to kind of claw back into that game a little bit. Vince, before we move on to the offense, I want to get a couple super chats here.
Yes, I've got Ethan's up here. I don't know where you're at, but I can pull up Ethan's. Thank you, Ethan, for the super chat. Ethan Wickman said, could this weekend have been any better for recruiting? Good weather, great atmosphere, great football. Anything about Nawankpa?
I don't know if it could have gone. Could it have gone better if they'd have won by 40? Sure.
Sure.
But overall, I think it was good, because I actually think having West Coast players on campus in a week like this is good. And you say
no surprises.
It's kind of cold, because then they kind of feel like, okay, I experienced the cold of Notre Dame. Right? You and I know it's wait a couple months, but I've heard that before. Like, wow, I was out there for a game and against so and so, and it was cold, and it wasn't that bad. And, so I think it's a good thing. But no, the lights, the atmosphere.
I thought the atmosphere was good.
I talked to a couple people that have been to a lot of games. Hey, what did you think? And I've been to louder games, but that was pretty good for the modern Notre Dame stadium,
Right.
So I thought it was good. No, it couldn't. And I talked to some sources. I'll have some information I'm going to put on the message board tonight at the Irish Breakdown Premium board. So look for that, Ethan. But I think it went really well. Like, really well. There's a couple kids. I don't have anything on Anthony Lucas yet, but I've got some stuff on Xavier Nawankpa. Got some stuff on Walker Howard, Billy Shroud. So I have some of that tonight on the premium message board. But anything about Nawankpa, I'll have some stuff on there tonight, but it went really well. That's not like code for he's committing tomorrow. He's got more visits set up.
Well, and he's got he announced
really
he's gonna commit December 8th. I saw
Right.
that today. So
Right. I think he's going to Ohio State next weekend or the weekend after for an unofficial, because these are all unofficials for Xavier, because he took official visits during the summer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So like several of those players, this was an unofficial visit for him.
Gother.
So yeah,
we got another.
It went well.
Excellent. So make sure you get on the boards. If you're not a member of the boards, right there, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Come join the family. Here we go. JP Buellsfeld. I think I got that right. Thank you, JP, for the super chat. It says, "Go Irish, beat North Carolina." JP's already turning the page. I love it. It's all, 1-0 every week. Love that. Completely agree with you, JP. Let's see. We've got a couple other ones. Tommy Guns. Thanks, Tommy. He says, "How many times do each of you rewatch the game in prep for this show, or is it just a lot of rewinding?" For me, I'll answer for me, and then you can answer for you. For me, I watch it once, but I rewind a ton. Like for offense, I will rewind it enough to watch every position at least once, specifically the offensive line. And then, defensively, I'll rewind each play a couple times, to see what I need to see. But offensively, I hit the back button every play, and it's multiple times a play. But it's just one time through for me, unless there's something specific I want to go back and find. It's one time through, but lots of rewinds.
I'll go through twice for this show. If I'm doing grades, I'll do it a little bit more, but I'll go through twice, once on focus on offense, and then the second time focus on the defense. Gotcha. So I don't alternate between the two. I try to focus on one side of the ball.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, within that, it's a ton of rewinds on each play. And then sometimes I'll get to and this kind of counts as more than one, I guess, but I'll get to something like, man, was this what they were doing the first half? If let me go back and check that,
sure,
and see something. So watching the third quarter, they're doing a lot. 12. I'm like, boy, did they do that in the first half? And then you go to the first half and you're like, oh yeah, they were lining up under center with 12 personnel. And didn't work. But so you'll do some of those things, and but yeah, it's kind of once through for the offense, one time through for the defense, with a ton of rewinding and referring back to my notes from the game when I watch it live and those type of things as well.
Which is why I like to watch it on my laptop, because I can just hit the arrow button for rewind as opposed to my iPad, which is a pain in the neck for rewind. But anyway, Matt's got another super chat for us. Matt Baisley, thank you very much, Matt. He says, did Kyron impress even more after reviewing today? Love 2-3. I don't know if he impressed more, because I'm already very impressed with Kyron.
I was going to say the same thing, Vince. No, he didn't impress me more, because I don't know if that was possible.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Look, last week after Virginia Tech game, I said I thought this was Kyron Williams' best game of his career.
Yeah.
And he was even better yesterday than he was today, which we said last night. So no, I think I picked up on some things about him from an energy standpoint that were even more than what I saw last night. Just a couple times where he kind of got up, and not that he was running his mouth like talking to the defense, but just like more like talking to his team, and just the energy and being fired up. And, I think those were some of the things that I saw last night from him that I was impressed with. But no, I mean, he was brilliant last night. I thought that at the time, and there's really nowhere else to go up from.
I mean, look, and anybody that's worried about the offensive line hurting his draft stock or whatever, don't worry about it.
Don't care. If anything, it actually can help him.
Right.
Because
he's doing this without. Yeah.
Right. Look what he's doing with a bad offensive line. He can maximize yards. He's had to do things this year that he didn't have to do last year because the line was so good.
Right.
And I mean, was it the fourth down play where Avery Davis just gets flat smoked inside? I mean, dead to rights. Kyron should be being brought down, and he just spins out. And I mean,
I really am impressed with his spin moves, because the spin moves that he had on that 3rd and long where he caught the ball out of the backfield, they had him 5 yards short of the sticks, and he ends up spinning out of it and gains another 10 yards. I mean,
he was really good last night.
It's so compact, and he keeps his balance so well. That is an underrated thing to be able to do. I challenge anybody to go out in the backyard with a football in your hand and spin and keep your feet and, keep your balance and all of that and keep your momentum going forward. It's very impressive. I'm actually really impressed by him. So we actually got a couple more super chats that just rolled in. John, thanks for the super chat. He says, Vince, do you want me to buy you some wireless earbuds? Love the show, gentlemen. We'll be signing up tonight. I appreciate that, John. I got a weird setup over here. Just full disclosure, it goes into my microphone.
We can't use wireless.
Can't use wireless because then I can't hear myself, and it's weird for me not to hear myself. It's too many years in radio. I have to be able to hear myself. So, but I appreciate the offer, man. I do appreciate it. Patrick Barnes with a super chat. Rushing yards up, sack numbers down. How much of that was a change in scheme, and how much was better O-line play? How did Alt look? We're going to talk offense.
We'll dive into that when we get into the offense, Patrick, for sure. And we'll reference your super chat. But yeah, thank you very much for that. I did want to get to just a couple comments up here at the top, Vince.
Please.
A couple questions before, because we will lose some of these. But I want to assure Kenny Moore of something. Kenny's my guy. He says, I just hope me and Brian can remain friends when Cincinnati puts a beating on his Broncos. I've watched zero snaps of the Broncos this year. I said this before, when they named Teddy Bridgewater the starter, I was like, well, one less thing for me to do on a Sunday this year. I haven't watched a lot of NFL in recent seasons for a number of reasons. I've explained some of them to people, but they're just, there's a lot of reasons. Number one is,
you're busy
breaking down the Notre Dame game and doing things like that. The other part is I just don't enjoy the NFL as much as I used to. And number three is the Broncos suck. And so if I'm going, and obviously this weekend they didn't play, but it's funny when they started off 3-0, I had some people like, see, this is why you were wrong about Teddy Bridgewater. I was like, 3 out of 16 games, fellas.
17.
Let's see how it is. And let's see how it is. And they've lost 4 in a row, and the offense is garbage. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So I'm okay with it because most likely it's going to end up with them having a new head coach soon, and I can live with that. So. But a couple other things that I saw down here that I wanted to get to real quick. This was a comment here from S talking about the wide receivers. I will get into that. And he asked about both Deion and Zoe look athletic. Do you think with experience that they can be a championship level group? We'll get into that. I just want to recognize some of these questions because I don't want people to think that we're ignoring them as we kind of get into some of these, and we may not have a chance to address some of these higher questions as we get into it. But so I just kind of wanted to kind of get into a few of those kind of things. So
cool.
I want to say one more thing about the defense too last night, Vince, that we didn't really get into is, other than Foskey, I didn't think anybody played great. And that's kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
They were doubling Jason Adamiola a ton last night. And so after the first sack, he didn't make a ton of plays. None of the linebackers were phenomenal. None of the DBs were great. It was just really good team defense. With there were some mistakes to clean up, but I thought it was really good team defense. And that was probably the thing for me that was my biggest takeaway of the game from the defense is they can play a lot better than they did last night. And the point being, this defense doesn't have to play perfect football to be really good.
Right.
And I think that to me is the thing that I probably most enjoyed after breaking down the game.
Yeah, I think that's a really good defense. I think that's a really good point because nobody defensively did I say like, wow, what a great game. Mm-hmm. And look, 2 strip sacks, that's awesome. And they came at really key times in the game. Okay. So let me be real clear on that. And Isaiah had his best, pass defense that he's had all year. So it was great. And I thought DJ Brown played about as well as DJ Brown is going to play for you at safety. That's great. But yeah, nobody really stood out to me. I thought Myron got a few good pressures. Obviously, Jason had that nice sack at the beginning of the game, but then we didn't really hear a whole lot from him the rest of the game, right? Some of that was
doubling him like the whole game.
Exact. And a lot of that was because it was a 3-man front, and it's 5 versus 3. I mean, go out there and play basketball 5 versus 3. The team with 5 is probably going to do pretty good, right? I mean, it is what it is. And so I tend to agree with you on that. They played well enough, obviously, to hold USC to 16 points, which is huge. It's absolutely huge. But there wasn't really a whole lot of like, wow, best game they've played.
Right.
So that's
if
a good
anything,
thing.
I was more critiquing. We've had people talking about tackles. I mean, look, this is the second game in a row where if you tackle better, you can take 10 points off the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Same way against Virginia Tech. That's got to get better. And it's mainly coming from the secondary, but it's not the secondary. It's not just the secondary, excuse me. But it's got to get better. So
sure.
So Vince, let's dive into the offense.
Please.
Ready to talk some offensive football?
I am. What are your overall impressions of the offense after watching the film? I'll throw it to you first.
I loved what I saw in the first half. I think when I broke the game down a little bit more, I was even more impressed with what we saw in the first half, because as I watched the game and talked to a couple people about it, you come to realize USC threw a completely different defense at Notre Dame last night. Completely different defense. They were in a 3-3-5 the whole night. There were times where they were in a 3-5-3 alignment last night, basically saying we're going to take your quick game away, we're going to take away your perimeter throws, and they still couldn't. And to be able to come out against, so for example, USC usually plays a lot more man. Vince, if you went back and watched the game, they were playing a ton of zone last night. A ton of, I mean, they were running cloud coverage. They were
which
running
I didn't understand.
I didn't,
be honest,
but things we didn't see a lot of that from them in the past. I haven't seen a lot of that from them in the past. And to me, I thought Notre Dame's ability to Jack Cohn, especially his ability to recognize that and get the ball out was really good. And I thought Tommy Rees's answers for those things were really good as well. It was a really well-designed game, but I was even more impressed with it. And we talked a lot about my thoughts on the game plan last night, but I was even more impressed by it when I realized that USC threw a completely different defense. They used the bye week, and this is one of those things that you're going to find sometimes. I don't think that it was necessary. Like, here's the difference between Notre Dame and USC. Notre Dame used the bye week to look back at their first 6 games and say, here's what we've done that we're really good at, and here's what we do that we're not as good at. Let's do more of what we're good at. So we talked about tempo, RPOs. I think let me pull up my numbers here because we'll dive into these specifically. But I had the Notre Dame quarterbacks were, 6 of 7 on RPO throws. No, I'm sorry, 7 of 8 on RPO throws for 66 yards, which you have to look at. And when you refer to the run game, because it's an extension of the run game, which puts the run design into more context. But 7 of 8 for 66 yards. Mm-hmm. You have to look at. We loved that. Loved the fact that they spread the field, which opened up the running game. I mean, there were so many times where Kyron Williams was able to find a hole after they washed some guys down because USC was spreading out. I mean, there was a time where they ran a bubble off of an RPO, and Cone handed the ball off, and Kyron was able to cut back towards the bubble, but the flat defender had worked out with the bubble, and so then he had to come late to Kyron. Ends up being like a 6 or 7 yard gain. Right. 2 weeks ago, that guy's sitting right there because they're trying to block him. He squeezes down and tackles Kyron after a yard or two. Or he may blitz if they're in 19 personnel or whatever they like to do with all the tight ends on the field. So to me, it was obviously a joke with the 19 personnel. They can't run 19. Well, they could. No, Notre Dame, they may try that.
I was going to say, it might.
But that those are things you look at and say, boy, that really had an impact on the game, and it really had an impact on the success of the game. But it meant even more to me when I look at it and say, boy, they were not running what Notre Dame thought they were going to run. They were not running what they had shown on film in the past. And they were kind of a hybrid 4 down. And part of it was they didn't have Drake Jackson, right? I don't even know if he played last night. I don't remember seeing him last night. Vince, did you?
I did not.
I don't remember seeing Drake Jackson last night. So when I look at it, say, boy, they threw something different at you, and it didn't get you off your game. And that to me was a really impressive aspect of last night's performance, to see them go out and play the way they did. Yeah, and I'm looking at the game sheet now. I do not see Drake Jackson's name. He was listed as a starter. But I don't see anything from him in regards to any kind of production. So I really don't know if he played last night very much at all. I'm trying to see if he had any stats. I guess he played a lot more than I thought, Vince. He had 6 tackles. Which says a lot about in a sack, which says a lot about, I think, the play of the offensive line, because I don't remember seeing Drake Jackson at all.
Crazy.
And so to me, that even adds even more to what I'm saying, because that means they were using him as a 3-down lineman instead of just replacing him with somebody else. So I was impressed by that. I really was.
You want to talk about all offensive line?
Let's dive into it, because it kind of leads right into that comment about Drake Jackson. I as I broke the game down, we talk about things that you see better that are differently. 2 big things I saw from the offensive line last night. Number one, I think Josh Lugg played better than I thought he played live.
Okay,
I thought he got beat a couple times, but even on the sack, he did what I think he didn't do a great job of it, but he rode the guy outside. And then that guy came off late to get the sack because the right guard didn't do anything to help the center, and they gave up that inside pocket. I think sometimes it looked like Josh Lugg got beat. It was actually the guard and Lugg trying to help the guard. But I thought Josh also had one of the more impressive blocks. There was the run that Kyron Williams took. He cut back behind Josh for like a 12-yard gain. It's like Kyron took the handoff and just went straight for like 12 yards to get a first down. It got him like first goal, like the 2 or the 3. If you watch that play, it was because Josh took the end and drove him like 5 feet inside and then just planted him. And so it looked like they slanted away from it, and Kyron just took the handoff in the inside zone, and literally it was technically a cutback, but he just went straight.
Right.
And it was because Josh just blew his guy up. So I thought Josh played a lot better than I thought. I thought Jarrett Patterson played better than I thought. I thought he had a good game. I thought he was a little bit up and down. But as I watched the game again, I thought I saw more and more positive snaps from him. I thought him and Andrew Kristofic really had some nice combo blocks in this game. I thought Andrew Kristofic was pretty darn good in this game. Joe Alt was solid.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting the
movement.
He was
a true freshman still. I mean,
he's not. See, problem with Joe is he's getting like almost no movement in the run game. But he's a freshman who played tight end in high school last year.
Exactly. I'm not expecting him to have the strength that he needs yet.
He's not 335 like Blake Fisher. He can't just.
He will be. I think he will be. And maybe not 335, but I think
he'll be like a 310, 315.
Right.
But he's not going to add a ton of weight. He's just going to get stronger.
He's going to get stronger.
And all that, Vince.
Yeah, exactly.
But the compete level was there. The technique was there. Like there was a play where it ended up being like a 2-yard gain, I believe, but they tried to bounce it outside, and he's got perfect position on the end, but he just couldn't finish because he just didn't have that grown man strength that you have after you've been in a Matt Bayless strength program for a year or two.
Right.
Not faulting him. I can't fault him for that. Right. But the thing is, he stayed on the guy until the very, very end of the play because the guy was outside and the play went outside, and eventually the only way you can hang on to the guy that way is
just holding him.
If you hold him.
Yeah.
And they'll call holding on Notre Dame. They won't call holding on Notre Dame's opponents, but they'll call holding on Notre Dame. Clearly. So I thought his compete level was good. His technique he's a really fundamentally sound kid.
I agree.
Which is kind of sad that their best technician is a true freshman.
Well, he lives with an NFL lineman. I mean,
it is, right? But
that's the way it goes.
He's going to be good. I thought he was going to be a good player. I gave him a 4.5-star upside grade. I just thought he was going to need like 2, maybe even 3 years.
And here's my thing: is he's playing well enough right now that I think you can have the discussion for next year to move Blake Fisher inside.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think that conversation can be had because of what Joe Alt is doing. And again, I realize Blake Fisher is going to be he could be a great tackle, but I think he could be
Quentin
generational.
Could have been a really good tackle in college.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So like, if he's playing well enough to have that conversation, then that's all I can ask for right now, because I think he's going to continue to get better as well.
He was really good.
Yeah. Yep.
He was really sound. I wouldn't say he was really good.
He was sound.
He was really sound.
Right.
And
I'm not expecting miracles
right.
from him. I'm not.
Look, I don't expect a kid like him. And again, his circumstance is different. He's not 335.
Right.
He was a tight end in high school. And when we say tight end, he wasn't just a guy that stayed there and blocked. He blocked a lot of tight end, but he caught passes too. I mean, he ran routes and caught passes. I don't expect a kid like that to come out and move people that have been in weight programs for 2 or 3 years as well.
Right.
But his when that comes, he's going to be really, really good. And that's the thing is he's doing in year 1 fundamentally and execution wise what I didn't think he'd be ready to do until in year 2. Now you need to get to year 3, strength part of it. The future is very bright for him.
I agree.
And we'll have plenty of time this offseason to talk about what you're going to do with the offensive line. But
absolutely,
I also thought live, like last night, I thought you were being a little hard on Kane Madden last night. I said, man, Vince has kind of got that little burr up, as you know what, about Kane Madden, right? And I was like, I think he was too hard on him. And then I watched the game again, and you were not wrong. His go-to, his try hard is there, but it's just.
And when all he has to do, when all he has to do is down block on a run play, okay? If somebody is on his inside shoulder, and all he has to do is down block and drive the guy off, that's his best play.
Right.
It's his best play. Okay,
it's his only play right now.
Yes, that's correct. Because anytime they ask him to pass block, number one, he doesn't go and help. I honestly don't understand. Even if it's a 3-man front that he's going up against, he lets the other guys just do their thing on their own, and he just kind of stands there. Like, okay, there's nobody coming. Go help out. Give him a push, give him a shove, do something. But
he just doesn't move his feet. And that's the thing where you say you watch him play and you're saying this is what we talk about when you talk about not a well-coached offensive line. His technique has regressed so much since he was at Marshall. And part of it, I think, is the pressure of being at Notre Dame and all the expectations. But, I mean, things that we saw him do time and time again at Marshall. And, again, we weren't very high on him. We weren't buying into the All-American hype that people were making about him. But still, the one thing we said this summer was he's going to be physical and he's going to be fundamentally sound. He's the exact opposite of that. And there were times like I didn't see what you were talking about when you were talking about the pass blocking, and he would just kind of like he was looking outside and he was like watching the right tackle block a guy out wide. Now, at first, you look outside because if that guy does an immediate spin move inside, like the play against Virginia Tech, for example, the sack early in the game against Virginia Tech, Joe Alt gave up. In that instance, in this protection, if that would have happened to Josh Lugg, Cade Mann is right there to chip. But once that guy kind of gets to a certain point, you teach an offensive guard. Once he gets to a certain point, that spin ain't coming. You've got to look back inside. And he just stayed. I mean, I've never seen an offensive lineman. Well, yeah, I have. Was it the second game of the year with Zeke Correll? Second or third game of the year with Zeke Correll?
Yeah.
This is the second time this year that I've seen an offensive guard do something that I've never seen before, which is go a lot of the game and just not block anyone.
Yeah. He runs through and doesn't he'll run through everything and then come out the other side and then go help the running back up.
Yeah.
That doesn't do me any good.
He stops his feet. He's kind of a top-heavy kid, just his build.
Yeah,
and he'll stop his feet and just kind of, John Klimek had a comment on it. He said, I watched 62. That's Kane Madden more than I normally do. He blocked no one at least 5 or 6 times.
That's an understatement.
And he falls down a lot.
Yes, he is on the ground more than any other offensive lineman I've ever seen, and not in
for
a
the
good
right
way.
reasons.
Right. Not because he's pancaking guys.
Right. He's not on the ground as much as like Quentin, for the reasons Quentin Nelson was on the ground a lot.
Right. Yes, completely agree.
And it's happening at the line of scrimmage, whereas when Quentin would do it, it would be like 3, 4, 5 yards downfield, and he was popping somebody.
So
that was kind of that's the
last move for me is they need to find somebody else to play right guard. Because
they clearly can't fix it.
Right. They've had 7 games, and he has not gotten better. In fact, I would say at times he's gotten worse.
Much worse.
Whether it's Rocco, I don't care. Somebody else has to be better. has to be better. That's my last look. They made the switches on the left side. I applaud them for that.
Did well. But
let's make a change on the right side. And if maybe it's moving, Lug inside and giving Tosh a start. Okay. That would be great. Yay. Right. You've got to do something to take the next level for this offensive
is John
line.
Dirksen and Rocco Spindler really this bad?
That's exactly my point. No way.
And I'll say this. Okay, let me say this too. Let's say they are that. Let's say they're just as bad as Kane Madden. I'd still play them because there's at least a future for them where this experience could benefit them next season.
Exactly.
Kane's a 6-year senior. He's done after this year.
He's not coming back.
And
thankfully.
He can't come back. He can't. I mean, he's a 6th-year senior. There's no more years left.
Absolutely.
So that like to your point, that's the final move. And I don't really care what that move is, but that's the final move. They have to make a move there because
the move has to be 62 is on the bench. That's the only move that works for me.
And I don't say that kind of thing lightly, nor does Vince, but it's just I kept waiting on him to kind of at least get better, and he's progressively gotten worse as he's gone. He's just not being coached. It is what it is. What'd you think of the play of Andrew Kostovic?
You know what? He battled. He battled his butt off, I thought. And once he latches onto somebody, they don't get off.
Yeah. He did a really nice job of working his feet through the entire play all night long.
And his double teams, I thought, were good. I thought he got
Patterson especially are really good in working combo blocks.
They have good communication about who is going to go to the next level and who's going to stay on and all of that. Right. I thought that was really good for a guy basically making his first start. Mm-hmm. I was very impressed. You wouldn't have thought that he is just now getting his shot at left guard.
He had one big mistake. He had a play on a screen where if he blocks a guy, Kyron is gone. You know which play I'm talking about? They ran a screen to the left. It was the play where Jack Cohn, it was a great job by Cohn of getting that ball. I mean, the fact that he turns around and there's like a dude right there and he's like, just snaps it off. If Andrew gets that guy blocked, he is gone. But honestly, outside of that play, I thought he was really solid. He wasn't dominant, but he was really solid. Good first start for him.
Absolutely. A lot to build on them too.
From center to left tackle, that was a big thing for me, Vince, is the timing was really good when they were talking about working together. Even though they weren't, because Andrew's not a blow you off the ball guy. Jarrett Patterson's not a blow you off the ball guy. Joe Alt's not there at that point in time yet either. They're not, Blake Fisher, Quentin Nelson, Aaron Banks, Tommy Kramer, Alex Barr. They're not that. They're just do your job, play with good angles, play with good leverage, and stay engaged. And I thought the pass pro outside of one snap last night was really good. Part of it was USC was dropping 8 all night long.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes things easier, obviously, but they still got a sack with a 3-man front too.
Right.
Because it was 3 on 4.
And it was partly a coverage sack. I mean, because they dropped 8.
True.
It's not like Jack hit the top and got overwhelmed as much as he did earlier. I thought Jack did a good job of staying in the pocket. And then when he went to step into the pocket, there was that guy right there and there was nowhere to go. So it was part coverage sack for me. It wasn't just they got beat, but you shouldn't give up that kind of ground on a 3-man pressure. You shouldn't. But that was kind of my takeaway from the offensive line. And bring up a super chat from John A. along those lines. John Dirksen, Rocco Spindler, Quinn Carroll, we're all better in the spring game. And I saw the spring game. It says a lot. Yeah, because John's point being, the spring game was pretty awful.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I mean, look, I don't get it. All those kids have played guard at some point in time this year. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know if they made a promise to sit. I don't know what it is.
Right.
I don't know if they feel bad. It could honestly be that. Like they feel bad. Like, hey, we've kind of screwed this kid up. Like let's give him a chance to redeem himself and get his NFL future back. But
he's gotten 7 games to do so. And even if they made a promise to him, look, you want to win ball games, and it's time to think about what's best for the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and look, when you're recruiting this guy to come over as a grad transfer, even though you and I didn't necessarily agree with the fact that they should have brought him in, but the bottom line is they decided they wanted him. And
Right.
as a second-team All-American, it's not really going out that far on a limb promising him that he's going to get playing time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of a promise that a lot of coaching staffs would have made. And I honestly don't have a whole lot of problem with it. The problem I have now is if you did make that promise, you're going to have to go back on that promise because it's no longer what's good for the football team.
They said
that
they
has
didn't.
to be your first thing.
That's the thing. They said they didn't, but
well, you and I both know things get said behind closed doors.
But I mean, even talking to people behind the scenes, they say they didn't promise them that. So I mean, I don't know.
I got you.
I wasn't referring to what Brian Kelly said.
I got it. Okay.
I got my stance on that.
Yes, I do.
But
yes, I do. We've got some questions in here about the tight end blocking. Since we're talking about the O-line,
it was better.
It was
better. I thought Michael Mayer blocked better. I thought George Takis was way too inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
There was a play. It was out of 13. I think it was the first time they got into 13 personnel. I think it was the first touchdown drive, the second down play. I thought this is one of the few times I thought Madden and Lugg had really good movement. Like if you actually watch the inside of the line, they got a really good push, and they didn't get a good push for much of the night. There was a few snaps here and there where they got real good movement. The 3rd and 5, for example, that was an example where they got a good push, got 5 yards, set up a 4th and 1 that they converted. And if you go back and watch that, Takis and then I think it was Avery Davis both got beat, and that's where the play was made. That's where it was from that backside. Right. His blocking to me was really up and down. I thought Michael Mayer had his best game of the season last night, blocking wise. So that was a good sign to see. He was given better effort competing. But overall, the tight end blocking wasn't as good as it was against Virginia Tech. But it was better than it had been in the 5 games before that. It's about with George, it's just about getting him to be more consistent.
Yeah.
And there was another comment later that said the holding call on him was fictitious. No, it wasn't.
It was a hold.
It was fictional. It was
look.
So Chris, if you look at the original play, go ahead, Vince. No, explain it because
because you and I talked about this actually. Yeah. It was a good block. At first it was a really, really good block. The problem was he held on too late.
Right.
And because he held on too late, he lost his feet and he was still holding on. And that's where the hold came in, because if he lets him go, Diggs still gets the corner and it becomes a good block. Right. Once you lose leverage and he's getting outside, you've got to let go. Otherwise, they're going to call that every time.
If you're engaged with the guy right here, and even if you're holding him in a clean, and when I say holding in a clean manner, I mean holding him in a way where you're not going to get called for it.
Yeah.
But as soon as he kind of goes,
you're within the frame,
side, right, and you lose him, and once your body starts doing this, you got to let go. Because once you start doing this, and you still got cloth, then he's going to get turned, and that's where the holdings come. Now, that has happened to Notre Dame defensive linemen at least 25 times this year with no holding calls.
Right.
But every time Notre Dame's linemen do it, they seem to get called for it. And to me, that was a hold. That's where the hold came from, is when that guy tried to go outside and
he didn't let go.
He didn't let go, and he yanked him back.
The ball being passed him means nothing. It doesn't matter. He fell down with him still holding on. They're going to call it.
That's
it is what it is.
But that even adds to the point, Chris. If the ball was passed him, there's even less reason for him to hang on to him at that point.
Exactly.
So look, you don't want to. I always said this as a coach. Don't put officials in position where they can make a call against you, because they're going to mess it up. Right? Just do what you're taught to do.
Right.
And, it's kind of like some people thought that they should have called pass interference on Chris Steele on that first go route on the first drive. It was actually an RPO. Tried to throw that back shoulder to Kevin Stepherson, and Chris Steele was getting super handsy with Kevin Austin. But if I'm an official and if I'm a receivers coach, I'm going to say to Kevin Austin, I'm not throwing a flag on that effort. You got to play. You got to make a better play for the ball if you want me to throw a flag. If you turn around and you try to make that back shoulder throw catch, and that guy's yanking on your jersey, I'll throw the flag. But when you just give me this, stuff like that, and you don't even turn your hips to the ball, I'm not flagging that guy for that. He kicked your butt.
Right. I'm not bailing you out.
The same thing as a receivers coach.
Right.
You got to play better than that. People wanted a penalty on the interception. Kevin Austin's got to give better effort if he wants to be able to draw a flag in those situations. Now, the one time he did that, he beat Chris Steele up the field, had him smoked, and guy kind of tripped, kind of took him down. That was a better effort. You're going to get that call, but you've got to give better effort. You got to play better if you want to get those calls or avoid those calls. Receiver play, Vince, I felt like we talked a lot about last night. I don't have anything new about the receivers. Do you have anything new about the play of the receivers?
No, we talked a lot about 50-50 balls, and we talked about the effort, and we talked about their blocking as well. Avery Davis did not have a good day blocking, or at least in big moments, it felt like.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of Avery Davis's front, which was not good because that means he's looking back at the play after missing a block. And so that was bad. And I for him, I feel like that's an anomaly. I don't feel like that's a normal thing for him. So I'm willing to overlook this particular game. But he's if you sat him down and you asked him, that effort's not good enough. And so it is what it is there. But it's nothing that we didn't talk about yesterday. So no, I didn't see anything new.
Right. Quarterback play, didn't see anything new. I thought there was a couple times that I thought maybe Jack should have read the opposite side. There was a third down. Throw where he threw the ball, I think, to Takis, where I thought he should have. It was a stick slide combination. He went to the trip side. They were outnumbered, I think, like 5-3. I thought he should have gone to the other side. He actually did. He actually looked left. And if he would have stayed left, there was a mistake by USC. The flat defender and the corner both went out to the slide. And I think it was Kevin Austin came wide open on that. And he went away from it too quick, I thought. He didn't read the body language. Because if you read the body language of the flat defender, he's clearly buzzing. He's not. So what that means is essentially if I'm a flat defender, right, and I am kind of being taught, and he may not have been a flat defender. I have to go back and look at the play. But basically, you're taught to work through the inside receiver, right? And so your body language and all that's going to be in a way to where you can kind of play through the first inside defender to the flat, right? Because what you don't want to do is do what he did, which is kind of just take off right now for the flat, and then something comes open right behind you. Jack should have been able to read the body language of that guy and know that he's going. And he should have stuck it and then, bam, hit Kevin Austin. Because there was actually about 4 yards to each side of Kevin Austin where there was nobody.
Right.
He might have been able to catch that and quickly split and get 5, 6, 7 extra yards.
Or he'd been too wide open and dropped it. I mean, that's always possible too.
Hey, be nice.
I'm just messing up.
He made a couple tough grabs.
No, that one of his that shoelace catch that he made, granted, it was only for 4 or 5 yards, but that was a really nice catch. That is not an easy catch to make.
I will say this about the receiver play, about Kevin Austin. He has to, if he's allowed to come back next year, he has to come back next year because he's still way too raw. And hopefully he gets coached better next year. Having said that, this game was a lot different than the last two where he struggled with press. The reason I say that is because he struggled with those 2 press plays, but it didn't get in his head. That's growth. Right now, as a receivers coach, I'm dinging him. His grade's going to be low.
Sure.
But I'm also going to pull him aside and say, hey, look, we got to get you better. But I'm proud of the fact that you didn't let those struggles impact the other parts of your game, which is exactly what he did in the last 2 times. He blocked his butt off in this game. He
did.
And he had a big drop. He had the press, and he didn't go in a tank like he did against Cincinnati and like he did against Purdue.
Right. And that shows maturity.
Yeah. And he made a tough catch later in the game, that shoestring catch later in the game. So his problem is he's not coached real well right now, fundamentally and technically. And that goes back to the question that S said earlier. I thought the receivers played better because the game plan was built around the wide receivers. That's the difference. Getting Braden Lindsey the jet sweep, getting the ball out to Avery Davis, getting the ball out to Kevin Austin on RPOs. The receivers were much more of a focal point, so they made more plays. I don't think they necessarily played great because there were still way too many mistakes. Avery Davis in the run game, Kevin with drops, things like that. Now, I thought Braden Lindsey had a couple chances for big plays. There was one mistake that Buckler made. It was on his seam throw. So I was asked about this on the message board. You remember, Vince? It was the seam throw he threw on his first series. Somebody said, "Do you think he made the right call, the right decision?" And I said, "No, but I don't fault him for it, because a veteran quarterback." So what it was is they had 3 receivers to the left, and they were playing kind of a cover 2 look. USC was. The field safety over top of Mayer, or over top of the number 2 receiver, should be working out so that the snap, the corner came right down and let Braden Lindsey run right past him. Well, the reason the corner did that is because he thought the safety was coming off the hash to get over top. Safety stayed right on the number. He stayed right on Avery Davis. A veteran quarterback sees that and throws a rope into that window. Braden Lindsey catches it and runs in for a touchdown.
Right.
Okay. But I don't know if I should ask Tyler Buckner to do that, because Tyler Buckner, as a freshman, sees cover 2. Cover 2 is going to take away outside number 1, most likely.
Right.
And so now I'm reading 2 to 3. And based on I think he allowed the pre-snap look to take him away from number 1, and it took him to a secondary read. Based on that, he made a good read, great timing, got the ball out accurately. Michael Mayer made a great play. Right. So technically, I'm going to sit him down on film. I'm going to walk him through that, and I think that's what Brian Kelly was yelling at him for afterwards. But it's just kind of like, dude, really?
The kid just made a good play. Like, let's celebrate it. But yeah,
that's the thing.
It's not the time for that.
Yes, get him in the film room the next day.
Right.
Hey, you should have made this advanced read. You should have read it out, even though the pre-snap told you that. That's a veteran play. If Jack Cohn would have missed that play, I'd have been on him right now on the sideline.
Right.
Tyler Buckner makes that play. Hey, good job, buddy. Let's make sure you read that one out next time. Great job. And then you get him in the film room. But Brian Kelly just can't help himself. Like he's got to just get in your face and yell at you right now.
Because he wants everybody to have all the experience and to make all the experience throws. I mean, that's just who he is. So,
I thought it was growth. I thought Tyler's timing on his decision making in the read zone was better. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. If they're gonna go 13 personnel in the red zone, they better never ever have Jack Cohn at quarterback. Because the only way that's going to work is with Tyler Buckner quarterback. Now, I think they should go away from that. I don't think they should be running 13 personnel. You don't have enough healthy tight ends. Michael Carmody is not – they had him lined up in a flex one time. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, come on. But I don't want to talk too much about that, because overall I was really, really happy with the offensive game plan. So I don't want to –
Me too. It's just when they went 13
with a couple nitpicks. But – 13 personnel is not work. It didn't work on the first touchdown drive. You went 13, miss. You went to 11 on third down, and it worked. Touchdown. You get the ball at the 4-yard line, and you go 13, and then you go 11, but then you're in a bunch. And the way USC was played, USC had them. USC knew exactly what was coming. They were lined up outside the receivers, with the safeties and corners and the linebackers playing inside. Like they knew it was going to be that option slide, which Notre Dame runs a ton. They were prepared for it. You need to check out of it, or call a timeout or something. But those were some of my issues in the game. But overall, I thought the red zone offense was good. And I'm gonna tell you something else. The third down offense last night, I knew it was good, but I didn't realize how good it was. Third down offense last night was phenomenal. It was really, really good, Vince, because they went 8 of 12,
right,
which ties the best mark they've had in the last 2 years. Now, the reason that matters is because last year they had the number 7 third down offense in the entire country, and they still tied the best mark from last night. 66.7% on third down is exceptionally good when you consider also that you had another third down that was just flat dropped on the first drive of the game.
That's true.
But I thought the third down – here's what I liked about the third down game plan. They did some of the stuff they normally do with the quick options, right? Early in the game, they were running those quick options, and it was really effective because Michael Mayer, we talked about last night, was doing a really good job. Cohn was getting the ball out. But he also mixed in some levels concepts, Vince, that I really liked. And he hit like the throw to Kevin Austin over the top. I thought – they converted a 3rd and 13. Like when I first saw it, 8 of 12, in my head when I'm watching the game, I'm like, there weren't I couldn't remember any third and longs. I couldn't really remember any other than the one pass to Kyron Williams that we talked about last night.
Yep.
But they converted a 3rd and 6 with a 10-yard gain. They converted a 3rd and 9 with a 16-yard gain where he hit Michael Mayer at the sticks. Mayer makes a move and converts it. They converted a 3rd and 8. They converted a 3rd and 13. And they converted another 3rd and 6 with a 15-yard gain. They actually converted a lot of 3rd and mediums to longs last night, more so than you'd think a team that went 8 and 12. You go 8 and 12, you're thinking 8. And then one of the 3rd down misses they had was a 3rd and 6 and 2 down territory where they ran the ball for 5 yards, got into a 4th and 1, and they converted the 4th one. Yeah. That was a successful 3rd down play, even though it wasn't the ultimate success of picking up the 1st down.
Right.
You accomplished your goal of we're in 2 down territory. When you're in 2 down territory,
you're not trying to get it all. Yeah, exactly.
You'd like to,
sure,
but it's still a win if you get down. You need to get down to 2 or less.
Right.
Get me down to 2 or less, and that's a win for me.
Because they QB snuck it on 4th and 2 one time. I mean, they have faith. They have faith in Cone and his sneak ability,
and they needed it too the second time because they got no push on that 4th and 1.
No,
Cone
he literally ran into the butt of Patterson and then had to kind of spin out of it.
There's nothing here,
right?
Let me go
Which,
do something.
By the way, is an undervalued skill as a quarterback to be able to feel that and do what he did, because he went to the right and then he kind of hopped forward to make sure he got those 2 yards. So, Tom Brady's like the best ever at that, but Jack Cone did it really, really well.
Yeah. And I think part of what helped on the 3rd down, and we have a big super chat coming up, so I want to get to that in a second. But the other thing is, in the first half at least, I thought they did a really good job of they were really good with the 1st down pass game. I think like in the first half, they were actually split 6 in the first and 6 in the second. The first half 3rd downs were 3rd and 6, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3, and then a 3rd and 9. The second half 3rd downs were 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 6. They put themselves in too many unnecessary 3rd and medium to long situations because they went back to what they'd been in the past, which is running all the time.
Right.
Weren't running way too much on first set down, then getting themselves in 2nd and long situations that they then kind of have to to get out of. So I thought the first half, the efficiency in the pass game, because the 2 quarterbacks, Buckner and Cone, combined to go 22 of 30. That's 73.3%, I believe. That's a pretty good day's work. So I thought that helped with that helped them be a little bit more efficient on 1st and 2nd down. Now, the overall numbers weren't sexy. They were 7.1 per attempt and 9.7 per completion, which is not sexy, but it was a real efficient game for me. And that helped them on the 1st down. So we did get a super chat down here from Truman Dumel. Truman, we haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you back. He actually has a question, Vince. He left a super sticker, which we appreciate.
He announced his presence with authority.
Yes, he did. But Truman, thank you very, very much for that, Truman. But he also had a question down here. He said, how is Audric Estime looking on special teams? Audric actually also got in. Well, he also got in the goal line offense.
He had
and
a nice block.
Real nice block.
They had him lined up as like a wing almost, and had a nice block on the outside. So
he's been good on special teams. He's a physical blocker on kick return. And to me, Truman, I think the job he's done on kick return combined with what he did last night, honestly, instead of 13 personnel, Vince, at this point in time, you know what I would do? If you're dead set on having 2 tight ends in the field, I'd go 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends.
Right.
Because what that does is with Audric is it gives you, number one, he's a physical kid. You can kick out with him, you can lead block with him. It gives you a little bit more in the tackle box,
right,
versatility in the run game, much like we saw from Tommy Tremble. There's no tight end on the roster that can do what Tommy Tremble can do.
No.
But maybe you have a running back who can do some of those things. Not to the level Tommy did, because he's a freshman.
Right.
But I would actually look at that and say, hey, you know what? If we want to go big personnel, instead of a 3rd tight end, instead of Michael Carmody, put Audric in the game.
Yeah.
And then move him around, because the other thing, you can throw to him because he's got decent hands. At least he did in high school. I haven't seen him catch Notre Dame, but he caught the ball well in high school. But I like that. You can throw to him. You can run it to him. Put him in motion and run a jet sweep. It just gives you so much more creativity. No, right. And then the other thing you can do is you can go 2 backs and you can motion Kyron out. Like, here's what I would do. If you could even go 23 personnel and do this, Vince. This would be real creative. So after the interception, you get down to the 4-yard line. I'm going 23 personnel, right? I'm going to put, which 23 is 2 running backs and 3 tight ends. Okay. I don't love it, but here's where I would like it. If we put 23 personnel in the game as an offense, that defense is going to see that, and they're going to put their big boys on the field. So then I'm lining up with my 2 backs from the shotgun, and then I'm motioning Kyron Williams outside. Hey, guess what Kyron Williams can do? Run every single route tree that you have, right? And so you could do some ISOs where if you want to have a safety out there, I'll take Kyron on a slant route in that situation. Right. But it also, if they here's the other thing. What might they do when they see my All-American running back who's good catching the football?
They're going to overplay it. They're going to overplay it.
And then I bring that 235-pound monster running right down your throat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a lot of things. And they could also go 32 personnel out of that, Vince. Put 2 tight ends in the game, then give me Logan, Audric, and Kyron, and you got the same kind of things.
Right.
So that's the kind of creativity I'd like to see them do instead of kind of being the lazy, like, oh, let's go 13 personnel because that's what we did last year. You don't have Brock Wright. If you still had Brock Wright, go 13 personnel.
Right.
You still have Brock Wright and Tommy Trumbull, go 13 in the red zone. All for it. Those guys are now getting paid to play football legally. So
that's all legal now, baby.
Right,
come on.
Right. So that's that. So yeah, I think I'm hoping that Saturday kind of opened their eyes up a little bit to like, you know what? Let's use this kid. Why not?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you something right now. I'm going to have an article about this, but the future to me for Notre Dame on offense, personnel-wise, we'll see what they do schematically. I'm excited about the future of this offense. You've got Tyler Buckner. You've got Logan Diggs. You've got Audric Estime. Chris Tyree's like a veteran now as a sophomore, right? He's got multiple. He's got at least 1 more year left, possibly 2. Deion Colsey made a big play last night. Lorenzo Styles looked great.
Right.
It's amazing that these guys. It's kind of really cool how they figured it out as soon as Joe Wilkins got hurt. That the light went on for Logan Diggs, and as soon as Chris Tyree got hurt, like that moment, the moment he got hit with turf toe, Logan Diggs was like, "Oh, I know the offense now," right? And how that light went on for Lorenzo Styles.
Amazing?
Like the moment Joe Wilkins went down, like, "Oh, I know that play now." So it's really cool how that happened.
It's amazing.
And if you're not picking them up by sarcasm, I'm laying it on pretty thick, I think.
Yeah, you are.
But it's just amazing. Hey, give these kids a chance because they're talented players. Logan Diggs, Audric Estime, Lorenzo Styles, Deion Colsey, Chris Tyree. There's some really talented young players. Tyler Buckner. There's some Drew Pine. There's some really talented young players. Oh, and by the way, your left tackle's a true freshman.
And you have another left tackle-ish kind of guy who's a true freshman who's hurt. But
so,
still, the
future's looking really bright from a talent standpoint. And there was a couple other, bright future guys in the stands last night. One of them named Tobias Merriweather, who is having a great senior year. So yeah, it's that part. That's one of my takeaways. But also Truman, thank you again very much for that super chat.
Well, speaking of talent in the stands, we have a couple other super chats here. Corey D says, any news with the recruits who visited, or is it too soon? Do we improve our position with Nwankpa, Canoe, or Lucas? So
I have some updates on a couple of those guys. I'm going to put those on the message board tonight, Corey. So if you're a premium member, put that out. I have a couple more calls and the reason I'm not giving it just this second because I'm waiting to hear back from a couple people here real quick. But I do have some info that I've had a little bit that I've been able to get today. It's real initial. I will always advise, even though I think the info I got today is good and I'm going to put on the board, is I always advise people to not read too much into what a kid says the day after his visit's over or the last day of his visit, because usually there's a lot of emotion. They're loving it. It's more about, okay, let me see what he feels next Thursday when he's been to Ohio State or he's been to Oregon or wherever else these kids are going to go. But that definitely went well. Definitely have some good intel tonight. On the message board at Irish Breakdown. So if you aren't a member of that, sign up down there. But yeah, I'll have some stuff on there. But I think things went well. To that question, I think things went really well. I think Notre Dame made moves. Will it be enough to seal all these guys? We'll find out. And that's not a tease to go read the message board. I mean, generally we'll find out. I don't have that answer.
Right.
But things went really well this weekend. And there were so many Notre Dame players. Like, There's a picture of Tommy Rees hugging Tyler Eifert and Zach Martin before the game.
I love that picture, by the way. I saw that.
I mean, there were some dudes on campus last night, like Anthony Lucas standing with Chase Claypool. I'm like, Chase looks bigger than Anthony Lucas. You know what I mean? Like, it was big time. It was big time.
Patrick Barnes has a super chat here as well. Thank you, Patrick. It says excited for Styles' future at wide receiver. Yeah, he flashed. Did
we answer Patrick's first? We did. We got to that. He talked about he had some questions about the offense, right? In his first super chat, Vince. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think we right? Pretty sure we did. Let's see, it's right here. He says rushing yards up, sack numbers down. How much was the change in scheme, and how much is the O-line play? Okay. Yeah,
I thought the O-line change in scheme. That was the one thing we did. There really wasn't a change of scheme last night. There was no, like, Notre Dame didn't do what USC did, which is add a bunch of new stuff. It was really a shift in emphasis. And that, to me, is the ultimate bye-week adjustment. What I hate is when coaches put a bunch of new stuff in, like USC did, and guess what? Your players couldn't always execute it at a high level. Notre Dame didn't really put anything new in. They had a shift in emphasis. Tempo, which we've seen before. RPOs, which we've seen before. They did a lot of things differently last night that we hadn't seen before. And to me, that was the key. Shift in emphasis as opposed to adding a bunch of new stuff.
Emphasis and tempo. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it was. Yeah. And it helped that. And we've been saying it for weeks, but that kind of thing can help your offensive line. And it did. And look, the offensive line played better. Don't get me wrong. They played better as a group. But those things combined is what helped. And it was great. It was great. Yeah. You got some visitors.
And again, I would encourage you all to go back and watch the first, especially the first, well, really the whole game. And watch how the RPOs influenced the run game. Watch how many times they were handing off to Kyron Williams and they were running an outside RPO, and the outside players for USC had to either freeze or work outside. And you're going to see how you talk about just the number of players in the box so many times last night when they weren't in 12 and 13 was it favored Notre Dame. And when you give Kyron Williams a favorable box, you have no chance as a defense.
Right.
None. And so we saw that last night. Sorry, Sadie is at my feet. Apparently the door to the basement is open because now Rita and Sadie are both down here. Rita's sleeping and Sadie is wanting something. She's wanting something. So
she's the one.
My apologies.
That lots of attention, which I understand.
Yes. My apologies for that. But so that was the one thing, Patrick, that we didn't get to. It wasn't really. I didn't see anything necessarily new from Notre Dame last night, which I don't think they needed it. They always had it in their repertoire. They always had it in their tool bag.
Right.
They just didn't use it enough.
Exactly. Agreed.
Yeah. And we did have a comment down here. This was hilarious. Talvids, did you hear what Dante Williams said? I still don't feel like we lost that game. We ran out of time. Did he watch the 2019 game like in the locker room before the speech? Like, that was one of the weirdest comments that I saw last night. Was like,
he's trying to make his guys feel better. I get it, but like,
they're not stupid.
Exactly.
They're not stupid.
He's insulting their intelligence.
If Clay Helton would have said that in 2019, I'd have been like, yep, I get it.
Right.
Notre Dame was about, if there was 3 minutes left on the clock, Notre Dame would have punched it in and it had been 38-16. Like, what are we talking about here?
Notre Dame ran out of time.
Right.
Notre Dame ran out of time to put you away.
Now, maybe he's talking about maybe we ran out of time in the second quarter, but hey, you had the time. You're the one that decided to do a run play with 20 seconds left and no timeouts, and then decided to do a spike play out of the shotgun.
Right.
Who does that?
Nobody.
Oh, USC.
Nobody does that. I watched it again today, and I texted you. I was like, I watched this 3 times because it just cracked me up.
It's funny.
It cracked me up.
It cracked me up because it was USC. If Notre Dame would have done that, I
would have lost my,
my television out of my window.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would have charged Brian Kelly and Tommy Rees for the replacement. It would have been so dumb.
You're right.
But yeah, I mean, that's on you, buddy.
100%.
Right? I mean,
100%.
That's on you. He in that is where I will give him a little bit of a break, because that's where when you're an interim coach, you don't quite have the say-so on
Agreed.
things. He was hot after that.
He was.
You could tell he was pissed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't at the players. It was
at his staff.
Dude on the other side of that microphone.
No question.
He was hot about that.
And he should have been.
Yeah. Quick, Corey D. Kurt Hinish is done after this year, right? And yes, he is. So just so everyone's clear, Kurt played 4 full years at Notre Dame.
Right.
He got an extra year because of COVID. So there's no way, shape, form, or fashion that Kurt Hinish. The only way he could have come back next year, is if he got hurt in the first 4 games and had to take a medical red shirt. But
right. So he had 5. He's on his 5th year, not his 6th, but it feels like 6 because he played all 5 years.
Yeah. And I don't know if we talked about this, but Colonel Klink's monocle, which anytime he or she asks a question, I feel like I want to get it up because I want to just say that. So it finally seemed to be a real game plan in the way they use Conan Buckner. We talked about that last night for people who didn't watch the show last night, but I agree. Both quarterbacks knew exactly how the quarterback rotation was going to go last night. And that's the only way you can use 2 quarterbacks effectively.
We've been calling for that
last night is exact. Somebody said to me, somebody texted me like, did Brian Kelly and Tommy Reese listen to your show? And I was like, 1, no, but 2, I can understand why you would think that.
Yeah.
That was encouraging to see because they're not listening to us. They didn't do what they did last night because they listened to our show and were like, okay, let's just do what Driscoll says because I'm really getting sick of him bitching about this, right? That's not what happened last night.
It'd be funny.
I mean, I like to tell myself that, but that's not what happened last night. It was more about like they self-scouted. And
they did what they were supposed to do.
It's a lot easier to self-scout a team you follow than your own team because you're always getting ready for that next game.
Sure.
I'm somewhat sympathetic. It's not okay, but I'm somewhat sympathetic to it.
Right.
But I think that is the thing for me is to see that it's all the things we've been asking for since the summer, even the quarterback rotation. This is what we wanted from going back to May and June.
Yeah.
Use Tyler Buckner. He's too good
not to play.
Go watch that touchdown run. Tell me there's not a role for that kid on this football team.
Right.
But it has to be done the right way. And I thought last night, and the fact that they threw the first 2 times, though the first time it was actually an RPO, it was a pull off of a read. It wasn't a play action. That's something else too. I want to mention real quick. But the fact that they did that, his first 2 plays, I thought was brilliant. Because if he would have had another opportunity to play Vince, he would have been even more effective in the run game because they're like, we got to throw now. The other thing too that I didn't bring up earlier when we were talking about the RPOs, there was more versatility to the RPOs, which we talked about last night. But I think the other thing too, Vince, is I thought the RPO game made the play action game a lot better last night. Like they were hitting some play action plays before the run game really got going because it looks like the RPO stuff. And I think that's another thing that I felt made for an effective I mean, the first half, outside of Kevin Austin's drop, USC didn't stop Notre Dame in the first half. I mean, they really didn't. Notre Dame stopped themselves. Jack had that miss to Michael Mayer on the play. They settled for a field goal, and then Kevin Austin had a drop, which was followed by a missed field goal. I mean, but Notre Dame did what they wanted to do against USC in the first half. I mean, it was impressive.
Completely agree.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Completely agree.
Yep, it was impressive. So, Vince, I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. We will be back tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We are going to talk about whatever Brian Kelly has to say at his press conference tomorrow, which are always entertaining. And then we are going to talk about the weekend of college football because it was another entertaining weekend of – I mean, I saw some upsets coming this weekend. I didn't think it was going to be – Illinois over Penn State.
9 overtimes.
We're
going to talk about the overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Too. We're talking about that.
I also want to pat myself on the back. My prediction for Oregon, UCLA was 34-31 Oregon. And my prediction for Clemson Pitt was Pitt 27, Clemson 16. We don't need to talk about what my score prediction was for Ole Miss and LSU. That's irrelevant. But for those 2 games, I felt proud. I mean, I got those pretty darn close. But we'll definitely be talking about Clemson tomorrow because I said they were going to take a step back this offseason, Vince. You did as well.
But I didn't think it was going to be this
I didn't
far
think it was
back.
This bad.
No,
I didn't.
No,
I didn't. So we're going to talk about that as well. So everybody, real quick super chat. Corey D, thank you so much for that. The play of Clarence Lewis is concerning. Any chance they may move him to safety and put Barnes at corner next year? Clarence Lewis in Columbus next year scares me. Not if he's playing safety. All I'll say is I won't be shocked if a good offseason from the freshmen that are currently there and the incoming freshmen who will be early enrollees, if a good offseason from them results in Clarence playing safety either as early as the spring or at least by the summer.
Right.
I think they may want to see how the spring goes and see those guys prove themselves. But I think that's a possibility. I can say, talking to sources, that it has been discussed as part of the future at the position.
Right.
And I've also heard that Xavier Watts has really made an impact. So if Kyle Hamilton is out for a period of time, which based on Brian Kelly's comments today, I don't think that he will be. But if he is, I wouldn't be shocked if they – and it may just be a thing where, like, even if Kyle can play, him going down has to be the thing like, hey, we got to get Xavier ready to go.
Right.
But I've heard they're very impressed with what he's done as well. So I think we're going to see a safety position depth chart that looks a whole lot different next year than the one now. So that's going to do it for tonight's show, everybody. Thank you so much. We had a great audience tonight. Thanks again to everybody that showed up to the tailgate this weekend. It was a ton of fun.
I had a blast.
You guys ate a lot of the food, but enough for me to be able to today reheat some chicken and
there you
some
go.
subs. Sorry, Sadie's trying to get up in the camera.
Yeah, she is.
But it was a great time. Got to talk ball. Vince showed up after we set up and left before we tore down, which was perfect timing. Great game planning by Vince. But we had a lot of fun last night.
Self-scouting.
Yep. Sorry. She's like clawing at my leg right now. So I'm either, if I won't have any skin left on my leg.
Oh, so, going right in for there you go.
So anyway, everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. It was a lot of fun. We will get back at it. We'll have grades on the message board tomorrow from tonight's game. I will have some recruiting scoop up on the message board tonight at irishbreakdown.com, so check that out. Otherwise, tomorrow we are on to, it's going to be starting to get ready for North Carolina because it's going to be another big game this weekend. So anyway, everybody, thanks for joining us. For Vince, I'm Brian. We will talk to you again very, very soon. Sadie looks like she has something to say, Vince.
I know, right? Right in the mic.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.